Well, welcome back. Our next session today is a panel discussion on the imperatives of ICBM modernization. The Air Force awarded Northrop Grumman the contract to build the ground-based strategic deterrent in September 2020. The GBSD program will develop and deploy the new missile system that will then replace the Minuteman III. Today's world is growing more complex, and the threats continue to evolve. The requirement for a ground-based nuclear deterrent is as great today as it was a generation ago. Yet, the budget and programmatic challenges ahead are daunting. Modernizing is expensive. The technical hurdles are not insignificant, and the political environment is fraught with challenges. Joining us now are a couple of real experts who have been focused on this program and the GBSD program for a while now. Manuel is Vice President and General Manager for Strategic Deterrent Systems at Northrop Grumman Corporation and Space Systems. And Colonel Jason Bartolomei is Director of the GBSD Systems Directorate. So gentlemen, let's start with some opening remarks and an update on the current program status. We're fortunate to have you here today, and AFA and the Doolittle Leadership Center can't thank you enough. So Colonel Bartolomei, Jason, over to you first, and then we'll ask Greg for his perspective.
Yes, sir. So thanks, General Wright, and thanks, AFA, for the opportunity to share a little bit about GBSD. I thought, it might be worthwhile to spend a little time with the audience just to take a step back and talk a bit about GBSD. We heard some great remarks from General Ray and General Tempo, but so some of these remarks, I think, will set the comments that both Greg and I make and put them in context. So again, GBSD is a total system replacement of the land-based leg of the triad. And so this includes not only a new missile, but a new C2 system, new infrastructure. And, it's a true system of systems. And, we've done a little math with my CFO, and if you slice and dice GBSD, a particular way, it rolls up into almost a dozen ACAT-1 programs. So when you think about the Air Force having about 50 ACAT-1 acquisition programs going on at any one time, the size and scale of GBSD amounting to almost a dozen of those really gives you a sense of the size and scale. Now, again, we're replacing the land-based leg that exists in 3 missile wings. And in each one of those missile wings, as many know, we have 150 silos. And for me, I always reflect on just the size of each one of these missile wings. So, each missile wing is the size, or the land mass is the size of a mid-Atlantic state. So, if you think about Malmstrom and you look at the state of Connecticut or Minot, think about the state of New Jersey, or F.E. Warren, think about the state of Maryland. These weapon systems that we deploy, and they really do behave as a single weapon system, these missile wings, it's just important to consider just the size and scale. Now, when we think about timelines, again, when we start replacing a missile sortie of Minuteman III and converting it to GBSD, that will happen once a week for 9 years. And so, if you think back what you were doing 9 years ago, when we start this transition, again, think about 9 years in the future, and that is the conversion timeline for actually replacing the entire sea-based leg. Really is both the missile and the submarine together. So it truly is a battle network, and that is in many ways the way we're thinking about it as we acquire it. Now, some people call GBSD a generational program, but I really think it's more accurate to say it's a once in every other generation program. So we know right now that the work we're doing together is going to be in missile silos for 50 years. And when you know that you're going to design and develop a system to be in the inventory for that long, it really does impact how we think about designing and building it. And I think it's important to note that the Minuteman III, when it came online, we only saw that weapon system being online for about 10 years. So it really does impact how we're thinking about that. Again, the timeline for GBSD is key. I believe that we really began the project about 7 years ago, sort of at the last possible moment, because the Minuteman III system is aging out in attriting. And so these are, contextually some of the big ideas that I think we'll talk about in our discussion today. I guess the size and scale and importance of the system has us really rethinking large scale acquisition, not just for GBSD, but I think you're going to see a lot of the insights and learning that we're doing inside GBSD impacting other acquisitions. One area that I think it'd be fun to talk about is just rethinking the nexus between the operational community, the intelligence community, and acquisition. I can tell you that's been a really big bright spot for GBSD as we've laid in our plans. We have a big emphasis, as General Giannatempo mentioned, on flexible design and modularity. I think you're going to find that GBSD is truly an innovation-friendly weapon system, and I think we can give some examples on that. And then the last couple thoughts is that we've really been working closely with industry to set the conditions for a healthy industrial-based ecosystem that's going to last for decades. And then certainly the work that we're doing in digital engineering, digital acquisition. I look forward to sharing with you all today on what we're learning about that. I don't think many people realize that the whole discipline of systems engineering was born in the ICBM with General Schriever and TRW, back in the day. And I think what you're seeing right now is that we're building upon that heritage. And I think with digital engineering, you're seeing a systems engineering 2.0 that is actually going to be bigger than just what's happening inside the ICBM. I think it's going to impact other weapon systems, and I think even the commercial sector. And so, General Wright, we're really looking forward to the discussion with you today. And now over to you, Greg.
Thanks, sir. Greg.
Hey, great. Thanks. Thanks to General Wright and Jason. I just got a few things to add on top of what Jason had to say. One of our biggest challenges is not our ability to modernize to meet today's requirements. This is really the challenge to ensure our systems are designed to be capable of evolving to meet the future requirements. We're in a different day and age of how we do and how we engineer these weapon systems, and it's not necessarily a binary approach. On this modernization we're executing today, leveraging the concept of open system design is key to allow for rapid and affordable technology integration, and that's an underpinning for GBSD. In the end, as General Ray and General Giannatempo mentioned, these systems can't be designed to last for 10 years or 15 years. They have to be designed to last for 50 years. If we're going to invest the amount of money that it's going to take to modernize not only the entire triad, but specifically the land leg of the triad and then replacement Minuteman III with GBSD, we really got to focus on how do we ensure that we allow for a constant generation of upgrades to just naturally happen without a whole lot of impediments during the follow-on activities. If we then take the idea of what I just mentioned and then couple that with this, as Jason references, this close collaboration between Air Force and industry, and we utilize this next generation of digital design tools, as General Giannatempo referenced, and we apply the new concepts of agile software development. We actually believe that we can be successful in designing a weapon system that not only lasts for 5 decades or more, but will be easily upgradable as technology changes, as the threat changes, as the desires of the United States Air Force and the government, focuses the weapon system to maybe want to do something different or provide a different level or dimension of deterrence. So what this means is in a sense, we have to think about how do we digitally innovate or transform the entire life cycle of designing, engineering, testing, producing, maintaining, and upgrading in the future a weapon system like GBSD. So everything that we talk about for a weapon system like GBSD is all associated with really driving a new way of engineering the system, designing, developing, and producing at the same time and sustaining a safe, secure, effective, affordable strategic deterrent system is just really what we're focused on. And our team that I have the opportunity to lead at Northrop Grumman is really looking forward to partnering with the Air Force as we work through the execution of this mega project called GBSD. To do that and to stay on schedule and on budget is something that we're all going to be focused on. Driving affordability into a multi-billion-dollar weapon system is imperative and not necessarily all that easy sometimes, but it's something that we're all focused on and partnering with the Air Force on. So, General Wright, thank you for the opportunity to be here today and look forward to your questions.
Thanks so much. Well, you know, the nation is blessed by the incredible experience that you both bring to building in decades the first new strategic, the land-based leg of our strategic nuclear deterrent capability. So based on your experience, first with Jason and then to Greg, you know, when you talk to the taxpayer today, when you talk to Congress and those of us who are not nearly as experienced as you are in how you're going through certainly the research and development, but now at the point of really designing and building and fielding the new land-based leg of our triad. What have you seen change in your experience that you can really relate that is exciting? That's exciting about how we work together, the new manufacturing techniques, you know, the amount, the level of innovation really that's coming into your ecosystem, you know, based on what you saw even 10 years prior to now. So your own experiences, you would relate that would be very, I think, very helpful for the audience. So Jason, please, and then Greg.
So I think I'd like to kind of zoom out a little bit, General Wright, because you hit on a couple themes I think are very important for the audience. I mean, first, I think what is different about GBSD and maybe this time around is just a recognition that GBSD is truly a whole of government program. And I think that leadership, you know, at every level from the Congress to the national policymaker level, all the way down to the junior officers and the young civilians and junior engineers and program managers in industry, it's going to take just an incredible amount of resolve. And it's really going to take everybody working together. I think one of the things we've enjoyed, General Wright, in GBSD, and as a young, well, I guess not so young, as a lieutenant colonel, my squadron command tour, and we call it material leader in AFMC, was my first day on the job was the first day that GBSD became a program back in 2014. And from day one, I think what we see is that, you know, that whole of government national resolve penetrated the relationship between Global Strike Command and General Ray's team and the acquisition community. And I would tell you that the intelligence community was brought in very, very early. And what we've seen over the last 7 years is actually a phenomenal amount of clear intent from leadership, a stability in requirements. And I think what may surprise folks online is that we've actually had a very stable acquisition strategy for 7 years. In fact, you know, when I was towards the end of my first tour, I remember briefing, you know, Mr. Kendall, who was the chief weapons buyer of the previous administration, and really the course that was set for how it is that what we're doing with digital, how we're working with industry, how we're approaching this was really born and has been stable for 7 years. And I think that is different than anything I've seen. And I think that stability is maybe one of our best bets for success going forward. The other thing, General Wright, is a mandate from the department to own the technical baseline and really a charge for my team to recapture the magic of General Schriever's BMO, the Ballistic Missile Office, and what happened when we initially got into this business of the ICBM. And in that mandate, it really forced us to rethink how we wanted to develop and acquire. And I think Greg hit a number of those key points. I think more importantly, I think it forced us to rethink how we are going to sustain this weapon system out to 2075 and beyond. I think that, senior leaders are always excited to see how we're using big data and analytics to get in front of many questions that will help set the table for transition. It helped force our accelerated move to digital design, digital acquisition. I think what you see us thinking creatively about how it is that we partner with industry, how Northrop Grumman in curating the baseline design of the platform have set the appropriate conditions so that we can have a healthy ecosystem over the next several decades, with many mission partners able to innovate and make sure the weapon system is able to keep pace with the adversary. And then the last one is, with modern IT and what we've learned in COVID, I think you're seeing GBSD become a nationwide program office that is allowing us to tap into the skill sets and the expertise across our entire country. And it couldn't be more exciting. I think Greg's emphasis on flexible design, where I see it as a focus on modularity, a focus on design margin in select areas, a focus on diversity, has really, I think, helped show some of the key ideas you see from the chief in Accelerating Change or Lose, where we're designing a weapon system that's truly a battle network that will be a hedge against the pace of technological change. It'll be a hedge against the adversary and the dynamic threat environment. And, all of those things are really exciting. And I think that, all of these things have been paying off, again, for 7 years now. This enterprise, and a lot of credit goes, from Congress to our mission partners in OSD and the air staff, and certainly the great work that we're seeing from industry, is that, this acquisition has hit every major milestone within days of when we said we would for going on 7 years. And when has that happened in the world of big acquisition in a long time? Now, looking ahead, it gets more and more daunting and challenging. But the last thought I'd leave you with is that I had the AFWorks director here, and you may know him. He's a great officer, a brilliant man, Nathan Diller. And when we sat down and we talked about GBSD being an innovation-friendly weapon system, and we showed him what we're doing with big data, how we're taking advantage of the modular design, how we're bringing in small business and venture capital into helping us think about some of the big problems, the last place most people look is in a nuclear deterrent as a beacon for innovation. But I think what you'd see, sir, and I think what the senior leaders have seen is that really there's an opportunity for this weapon system to be a value creation engine, not just for the deterrent, but for other really critical areas in our critical infrastructure. So those are some of the thoughts that come to mind, General, as you asked me that question.
Well, thanks. And for Greg, we've designated GBSD as an E weapon system. So Greg, could you talk a bit? You are probably the expert in the world in many ways. So manufacturing techniques, sooner or later, you have to, bend metal, if you will. Things have changed a lot in your career. So could you talk, for those that are not nearly up to the level of sophistication that you and Jason are, what does that really mean? When we talk about digital applications or 3D printing, when you really get into building the metal and the pipes and hookups, the electrical connections, all the complexity of GBSD, could you talk a bit about what's changed and what's so exciting about digital manufacturing today?
Yeah, certainly can. And I'll start off by saying this is not easy. And sometimes we talk about all the good things GBSD is doing, but it is absolutely not easy. And we have a culture that needs to be changed for all of our programs to start working their way in this direction. But as General Wright mentioned, GBSD has been designated the first E-Series acquisition program. What the E program designation is where a program employs a thing called a digital trinity The digital trinity is made up of those things called digital engineering, agile software development, and open systems architecture, the things I referenced and Jason referenced earlier. It's been extremely effective for the GBSD design and our development efforts. This idea of a digital trinity. But I want to go back to what I said at the beginning. I don't want to leave anybody with a misinterpretation or misimpression that this is something that you can just open up a box and go do. We talk about and reference this idea that we're trying to share information across industry and across our government partners on how to do it differently. And we are certainly working through the GBSD is working through the pathfinding of all those different things. But another key difference of what this digital engineering facilitates is a strong collaboration and partnership across the government and industry teams. None of this happens without the commitment of both the Air Force and the industry teams to drive the necessary cultural shift throughout the organization. We really need to drive this discipline to move away from and eventually eliminate the old ways of doing business and getting to the point of where we're living in the model. When we start living in the model, this concept of digital manufacturing comes into play. The concept of having the ability to have what we refer to as a digital twin, a digital representation of a product that is in place and that we understand it and we test it before we even build it. Back I started on the B2, back in 1983, and back then it was everything was an invention. We're not inventing anymore. What we're trying to do is really take the ideas and the things that have been generated out of big programs like the B2, F-35, F-22, and really apply it to maximize the benefit of connecting good ideas and good processes with a digital capability or good high computing processing power, and really driving the idea, the concept of now you're digitally manufacturing it before you get to actually bending metal, and now what you can do is once you validate all the interfaces actually are accurate. Once you validate all of the inputs to a wire harness, meet the in or the output of the wiring harness, before you even go to send those drawings to the floor, you're actually validating all that in a digital representative space. That way, you have a larger probability that you're going to reduce the overall rework cycle that just naturally exists on these large complex programs. So we recognize that technology is moving fast, and through our digital engineering efforts, we're able to design and drive this system for sustainability. When we talk about digital thread, now when you go to upgrade it in the future, you have a digital model of everything that was built on the manufacturing floor called a digital twin. So as you go to upgrade in the future, the idea is that it'll be much more affordable and shorten the timeline to drive those upgrades. So in the end, this concept of digital engineering is a means to an end. It's not necessarily the solving of world hunger. We really still have to produce the weapon system that meets the Air Force's requirements, and it has to be sustainable. So hopefully, General Wright, that answers your question and got to some insight into what digital manufacturing is.
Well, that's terrific, Greg. Like Jason, you're so smart, you can explain complex things so even I can understand it. So I appreciate it. Back to Jason a bit.
Yep.
Moving towards the future and looking towards the future, Jason, could you talk a bit about challenges and opportunities and milestones, a bit on timelines, at least an estimate, IOC, FOC, for example?
Yeah, yes, sir. Well, if you don't mind, sir, I'd like to just add 1 or 2 points to what Greg said, and then I'll talk a little bit about the next set of milestones. So, sir, going back to what Greg said, I think it's important for our audience to sort of listen to some of the statistics and some of the data and findings that we've seen to date. So, I would say that our digital strategy started all the way back in 2014. And if you sort of break up our digital adventure, I think maybe, Greg, that's what we should call it. From 2014 to 2016, we were in the conceptual design phase, sir. So in that phase, what we saw was a great partnership with Global Strike Command, moving away from a traditional one-page system requirements document to actually a digital model and an architecture of what it is that they really wanted industry to design and buy. And we shared that design model with all of industry very early on so that we reduced the ambiguity of what it is that we wanted to build. And what it did is I believe it gave industry a really great running start as to really laying in a solid foundation of a design. If you think about the next epic of time, which is from 2016 to 2020, maybe the last 4 years, we were in the tech maturation and risk reduction phase. And I think that not only do we emphasize architecture, but I think we emphasize the modeling and simulation that was really important to honing our understanding of what the requirements were doing in the design. Just to give you a pretty staggering statistic, we held with Greg and his team what we called the cost capability technical interchange meeting, where we brought our engineering models, General Wright, and our cost models into focus at the same time. And we asked industry to show us the cost versus capability of their design for every requirement. And as a government team, because we were also in the native digital environment, we were independently able to do that. And General Wright, we looked at 6 billion different configurations of the GBSD weapon system. And, you can't do that unless you're actually operating, in that type of environment. And now as we pivot to this current epic of time, we're now really are emphasizing the holy trinity of digital engineering. And I think Greg is spot on, is that we're learning so much is, building the appropriate digital infrastructure. I think you're going to see, General Bunch come strong about the need for the Air Force to modernize the IT infrastructure so that industry and the Air Force can actually operate in this digital environment. I think you're going to see, and I think kudos to Northrop Grumman being a first mover into, moving into the government furnished cloud environment, the government furnished digital engineering stack, and the software factory. And what that's allowing us to do is I think there's a solid business case for that, because we can provide industry certified environments that can help them move faster. It's beneficial for industry and my team to be able to see and watch the weapon system be built and designed over time. And to give you just a little anecdote, Greg and I's first real review in the weapon system was a 6-hour review in the model, where Greg's team basically went from message receipt, to the release of a reentry vehicle in the virtual environment. And both of our technical teams and our leadership teams were able to follow Northrop Grumman's design and architecture. And that happened within weeks of us really getting off on this foot. So, sir, I concur wholeheartedly with Greg that we are learning every week and every month together. And it's just incredibly exciting to see this mature. Now, as we look ahead at major milestones, this week we're baselining the weapon system. So we have what we call the Enterprise Integrated Baseline Review, which is very important. We talk about a whole of government program. There are as many activities on the government side of the ledger to get GBSD to IOC as really there is on Greg's to actually design and build the system. And we've worked very hard over the last several months to baseline the weapon system. And as we emerge from that, we'll start CDRs. So believe it or not, sir, we're already in critical design review timelines for the subsystems, and we're months away from first flight. So calendar year 23, by the end of the calendar year, we're going to be at Vandenberg, and we'll be flying the first test flights of the new weapon system. And in the virtual environment, Greg and the government team are already flying the design virtually, and we're already seeing its capabilities from a modeling and sim environment. So, sir, that gives a little bit of insight on where we are and where we're going.
Just to build on that for your timelines, so you're going to actually launch a missile in 2023. Is that correct?
End of calendar year 2023. Yep. Now we have a window, but that's it's not like going out to Edwards, General. So when we launch one of these things, it's quite of a conducting activity. But we're looking at the end of 2023 for first flight, sir.
Okay, and then any predictions on IOC, then FOC? I'm sure you've got that written down and maybe classified, but anything you can give us is great.
Well, so we're looking at, and we're tracking towards an IOC in 2029 and an FOC in 2036. And again, 7 years we've been rocking and rolling, and it gets tougher and tougher. There's a lot of work to do, sir, but we're still checking and tracking towards those dates.
We have about 15 more minutes here. Going back to Jason, starting there from your view as an industry partner. What are the challenges and opportunities that you see out there between now and FOC, really, given that the 2022 budget process is going to be like the 23 budget process, year by year? Certainly sustained funding is important to you and your team, but there may be other opportunities and challenges out there. So to Greg, and then that same question back to Jason.
Okay.
Sorry, Greg, I think you're went mute.
How about now?
Yeah, good.
Okay. I think some of the bigger challenges that we're dealing with, and something Jason and I work hand in hand with, is resources. In industry and in the Air Force, we're creating a resource pool that hasn't existed for over 3 decades, and really reestablishing critical skills in things like system engineering, cyber engineering, nuclear scientists, rocket scientists, all the way to supply chain professionals who deal in this type of environment. And what we're seeing is a significant pressure on the system that isn't necessarily affording us the opportunity to find and establish on both sides of our teams the critical skills that we're going to need in the future. Now, that said, we are hitting our hiring numbers, even in this post-pandemic, very positive economic, low unemployment time, and we are doing very well on hitting our numbers and staffing up to meet a mega project like GBSD. Now we're driving, trying to drive diversity throughout everything we do at what we call our hub and spoke locations. Starting here in Roy, Utah, which is just north of where Jason's sitting, outside the Hill Air Force Base Gate. But we also have good opportunities in Huntsville, Alabama, Colorado Springs, Colorado, and Bellevue, Nebraska. Then, as Jason talked about, we're expanding, and the infrastructure that we have to expand. When we expand, we have to have all these significant infrastructure we have to expand. These buildings don't exist. So it's not like we can just go take on a Minuteman III building and kick them out. We have to build all brand new buildings. So we have a massive construction project going on, not only here in northern Utah, but the other locations I talked about, but also at Vandenberg, where we're going to do all the test program, and up at FE Warren and Cheyenne, out of Great Falls, and then certainly out of Maelstrom. So just a massive amount of infrastructure that we're putting in to be able to facilitate and execute this program. The other thing that we're working closely with the Air Force is really trying to understand how do we invest in these future critical skills to develop this next generation workforce that's going to have to be in place to sustain this weapon system over the next 30, 40, 50 years. That's not easy. As Jason referenced, the ballistic missile office that created this ICBM workforce that exists today. But they are, over the last 50 years, you can imagine the attrition, the retirement, and the aging that's gone on, that we're just going to have to really focus on how do you regenerate that workforce, both on the government side and on industry. So hopefully that got after some of the challenges, General Wright.
Thanks, Jason.
Okay, coming off my mute here. So I think for industry, I think there's really two sort of dimensions that I've been thinking about quite a bit as it comes to GBSD. I think sort of one dimension is the acquisition and sustainment of the ICBM over the next 50 years, and as Greg said, we have, I think, a very innovative open system architecture, modularity design. I think that when you think about GBSD, General Wright, I think an analogy, which is probably terrible, but it's useful for me, is I like to think of GBSD as a new baseline platform for the ICBM, similar to maybe an iPhone. And when you think about what modularity and the data right strategy we pursued does for you is that we've reserved the right as the Air Force to put in applications on the ICBM over time, like apps. And the way we've done this is we've created, I think, an opportunity for there to be a very fertile ecosystem around the weapon system, so that traditional industry partners, as well as possibly new industry partners, are going to have the opportunity to really contribute to the design and sustainment of the system over time. The other dimension is a little bit not as obvious, and I would say that's sort of the dimension of kind of where I talk about sort of the meta design or the meta engineering of the system. And this is the domain of digital engineering, the DevSecOps and agile software practices, the place in the cloud. We talked about certification with General Tempo, but applications to actually innovate in how we certify the weapon system, how we do airworthiness, how we do cyber protections of the system. And that's an incredibly new and exciting dimension where I think what you're seeing in GBSD aligns with the Chief's vision and the Secretary's vision for AFWorks, and how it is that we can bring in non-traditional partners to solve some of these problems. And I think what you're going to see is that some of the innovations that are being born in the system are actually going to have knock-on effects to places like the banking community. I remember when I went to War College General, we spent some time in New York City at JP Morgan Chase. And when you listen to the senior leaders at JP Morgan Chase talk about cyber securing the banking infrastructure, it rhymes a lot with the things that we need to do in the Air Force. And so we're really eager to look and find ways that we can take advantage of these digital capabilities to do things better and smarter, and to protect our weapon system and really take the full advantage. I really like what Greg's talking about in the manufacturing arena. I really believe that we're getting closer and closer to realize the potential of really pulling the entire product development cycle and the systems engineering cycle, pulling that thread through. So these are things that come to mind when we talk about opportunities for industry and the way ahead.
Wrap up. Both of you have just the finest engineers maybe in the world working for you. Engineers, program managers with unbelievable educational backgrounds. Here at the Air Force Association and across our 200 chapters, we constantly talk about airmen for life, officer, enlisted, and civilian. And many of those airmen for life, in fact, are in industry. So just a few minutes, if you wouldn't mind, Greg, the opportunity to brag about your Northrop Grumman workforce, but that represents really you represent our entire defense industry workforce. And then, Jason, you wind up whatever you want to talk about, but certainly your exemplary workforce and leaders also. So, Greg, a few minutes, and then Greg, and we'll wrap up.
Yeah, no, thank you, sir. It's as you referenced, we are not only a very diverse workforce from maybe the way we look, the way we think, but we're also a very diverse workforce from where our workforce has come from all parts of industry and outside of industry, and for what it's worth, to your point, we have an awful lot of retired Air Force folks working for us, specifically on the system. What we find is these operators, these maintainers, these defenders, when they get out of the Air Force, they don't want to stop not working on ICBMs. So as a result, they seek out us or one of our industry partners to work for. So we have it's a fabulous workforce that is very focused every single day on making sure that we're doing everything we can to further this program and all of our work that we do on the current ground subsystem sustainment program for Minuteman III, that we just do what we can every day to make the warfighter's life easier, to be able to make sure that the system stays in a mission readiness position that it needs to and is expected to, and that we're delivering a GBSD weapon system on cost, on schedule, that meets the warfighter's needs, and specifically to meet as Jason talked about, we have really 3 focus areas: launch in 23, meet the IOC minimum requirements in 29, and get the full fleet replaced by 2036.
Well, thanks again, Greg and Jason. If you could please wrap us up. But again, I can't thank both of you enough.
Yeah, well, sir, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, this is probably one of the most exciting projects you could imagine, and an incredible opportunity space for these airmen to just amaze me every day. And I think one of the benefits of actually having so many senior leaders come and visit us out here is really that the PowerPoint charts just don't do justice to see just the innovations that these airmen are doing, both in the Northrop Grumman side of the fence and also particularly with my team here. I think we're outpacing a lot of what is in the textbooks and in the academic curriculum for how you do these mega projects. I think what you'd see, General Wright, and you'd be so proud of just sort of the thinking that's gone into this. We're seeing in the digital environment, brand new engineers that are coming out of school with master's degrees and bachelor's degrees, just dazzling 30 and 40 year veterans in their knowledge. And, we're seeing knowledge transfer happening in the digital environment in ways that I couldn't have predicted. And so, sir, I could not be prouder of this enterprise in what it is and what it's becoming. And it really, I can't say enough about the leadership, starting really all the way with the chief through the SAF AQ and Global Strike Command. STRATCOM has been spectacular. The sort of support we've gotten on the Hill and OSD, truly historic. And I'll tell you, those leaders have been moving mountains for this program. The attention the chief and the vice chief have put on GBSD is incredible. And I just can't say enough about it, sir. So really, it's not just these airmen down and in, but it's these airmen up and out that is making GBSD the successful program it's been. And the kind of resolve and what we're going to need from these leaders going forward is going to be every bit as important as it's been to date. So those are really, I'd love to have you out here, General Wright, so you can see it, and the other AFA partners. Love to show you what Greg's got brewing up here. Just a couple of short skips and jumps ahead north of me. But it's been great to speak to everyone here today, and thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thanks so much, Jason and Greg. You remind me when you're talking that maybe the fact that General Bunch was a Golden Glove boxing champion, that culture is pervading across AFMC. So you certainly reinforced that. Thank you so much, Jason and Greg both. Well, great discussion. And coming up next, we're going to dig into the challenge of sustaining aging systems.
Where is possible? Past the edge of convention, beyond the boundaries of tomorrow, where no idea is too bold and no challenge too great. It's here where we break free from what is to what could be. Because defining the future is impossible until it's not.
Look, sweetheart, Daddy worked on that.
Wow!
I want your dreams to soar just like that rocket.
From here, we monitor the spacecraft and help the astronauts get home.
Dad, this is awesome.
You can become anything you want. And the sky's the limit.
Do you have what it takes?